In the RPG Fanatic show, I have mentioned several times that many people miscategorize some games as being computer RPGs. In this video, I will explain what a computer RPG is and how they are unique from other types of video games. It's very easy to know if a game is a computer RPG or not. A computer RPG is a video game that has a character level and experience point system. If you really think about it, this is the only mechanic that computer RPGs possess that no other genre has. Some people disagree, pointing to other elements that a computer RPG must have, such as an epic story and turn-based battle system. Let's look at the early days of the genre. As I mentioned in a previous video, some of the first computer RPGs were games like Wizardry and Alcalabeth. While both games possessed turn-based combat systems, neither game possesses a narrative. Some people might disagree, pointing out the purpose of both games is to ascend a dungeon and kill a wizard, but a narrative is not an event. A narrative is a story, and a story has structure. Bob fights his way through a dungeon and kills a wizard is not a story, it's just an event. A narrative does follow a series of events, but that is not all there is to it. Both Wizardry and Alcalabeth are missing characters. The players' avatars in these games have no more personality than a chess piece. They have no motivations. They are nothing but a name, a graphic, and a series of statistical attributes. They cannot by any stretch of the imagination be considered a literary character. A narrative also needs plot arcs. A very simple narrative structure with arcs is a three-act structure: the setup, the confrontation, and the resolution. The three-act structure was first described in Aristotle's Poetics, written 300-something years before the supposed birth of Jesus Christ. The craft of writing stories is very old. It's not a brand new art, and it's not hard to find information about what a narrative is and what is not. Wizardry and Alcalabeth can be considered to very loosely have three-act structure, the heroes leaving on their quests, the heroes fighting monsters, and the heroes winning the game. However, neither game possesses protagonist characters who have personalities or explanations for why they're even trying to fight the final boss. They just are. Conversely, Dragon Quest possesses characters with personality and motivations, and at the end of the game the hero speaks in his own words. Dragon Quest is hardly the greatest story you can find in a game, but the basic requirements were at least present. The point is that because the computer RPG genre existed before computer RPGs commonly had storylines, possessing an epic storyline cannot be a requirement of a computer RPG. In fact, the introduction of complex storylines in computer RPGs coincides with the introduction of complex storylines to all video game genres, not just computer RPGs. Therefore, narratives cannot be considered the most defining trait of computer RPGs. The other supposed necessary requirements of computer RPG people talk a lot about is combat systems, namely turn-based combat. Some game reviewers insist all JRPGs have turn-based combat systems. Yet, these game reviewers have applied the JRPG label to action RPGs like Kingdom Hearts Star Ocean and the Tales of series. None of these games have turn-based combat systems, and many computer RPGs created by American developers also don't use turn-based combat systems. Therefore, the combat system is irrelevant for whether a game belongs to the genre of computer RPG. Combat system can only help place the game in a subcategory of computer RPG, such as whether it's a strategy RPG, an action RPG, or a console-style RPG. Some people will point out that computer RPGs have character classes. While it is true that many computer RPGs do have character classes, not all of them have character classes. For example, most action RPGs don't, nor does Dragon Quest. Therefore, character classes cannot be considered to be a mechanic that all computer RPGs share. I have also heard people claim a defining attribute of computer RPGs is dungeons. However, this simply isn't true. A dungeon is nothing more than a room filled with challenges. Whether it's called a dungeon, or a level, or overworld map, or whatever, almost every video game genre has rooms filled with challenges for the player to overcome. This is yet another game mechanic not unique to computer RPGs. Let's talk about role-playing. Many people claim that computer RPGs have role-playing. Unfortunately, this is not the case either. Role-playing as a game mechanic was introduced by Dungeons & Dragons in 1974. Role-playing requires the player to have an extraordinary amount of freedom to decide what their character will do in the fictional world. Characters can do anything they could do in reality and more. By contrast, computer RPGs only allow characters to do a limited number of actions and make decisions that were predetermined by the game designer. In a computer RPG, you may be presented with a puzzle that has only one solution. In a game of D&D, there is almost always multiple ways the player can solve a problem that the designers never thought about. Some people will argue that Dungeons & Dragons adventure modules have puzzles with only one outcome, so RPG games must not have role-playing. The problem with this thinking is that adventure modules were not part of D&D until a year after its first publication, and were not commonly published by TSR, the publisher of Dungeons & Dragons, until 1978. Also, the practice of forcing players down only predetermined paths with no opportunity for the players to come up with their own solutions is called railroading, and is universally considered in the RPG community to be a sign of a poor GM and a bad adventure module. It is not the way a role-playing game is ideally supposed to be played. Tabletop RPGs are supposed to emphasize collaborative storytelling, with the GM serving as a referee and travel guide, not a god. This is different for computer RPGs, where it is pretty much impossible to make a world where the players can have their characters do anything they can think of. The closest computer RPG to allow that kind of freedom is probably NetHack, and that game has been in constant development since 1987, and it still doesn't allow the player to do virtually anything they can think of doing. So having eliminated all the other elements people think of when they think of computer RPGs, we're left with only one unique element that all computer RPGs share: a leveling system and experience points. These two things are really the same mechanic. A leveling system cannot exist by itself, because there would be nothing to determine when a new level is reached, and the purpose of experience points is to determine when a new level is reached. These two elements must coexist, so they are the same mechanic. The character level and experience mechanic is unique from power-ups. Power-ups are objects or abilities the character can obtain to give permanent or temporary bonuses to that character, making them stronger for as long as the power-up exists in the character's possession. Power-ups and character levels may seem similar in that the result is identical, but the way they are obtained is not. Power-ups are obtained from clearing a challenge a single time. For example, defeating bosses, solving puzzles, and spending currency points in shops are common ways for players to obtain power-ups in all genres of games. However, character levels are obtained by repeatedly doing the same task again and again until the character gains the new level. Character levels simulate reality. It stands to reason that fighting many battles would make someone a better fighter, whereas simply giving an untrained person a better quality sword doesn't necessarily make them a better sword fighter. Notice that I'm being very broad with power-ups here. There are many special types of power-ups, but I think you understand what I'm saying. Power-ups make a character stronger by using a better weapon or armor, or through chance opportunity, whereas character levels represent a character becoming better over a long period of time through dedicated practice. Now, some people will point out that many computer RPGs claim to not have levels or experience points. For example, some games use a system similar to GURPS, where characters earn build points and spend them to buy new skills and traits that improve the statistics of that character. However, is this really a different mechanic? Both systems have the character use points gained by defeating enemies to improve the character's statistical powers. The execution of the mechanic is the only difference, making it nothing but a variation. Experience points are different than currency points. For example, Legend of Zelda allows the character to earn rupees by defeating enemies. The problem is that rupees are not normally spent to improve the character's statistics. There are only a few items, such as the blue ring and the big shield, that actually make the character stronger. Rupees are mostly spent to allow restocking of bombs and potions, and used as ammo for arrows. Conversely, in a computer RPG like Final Fantasy, experience points exist only to improve the character's statistical growth and are always earned when the character defeats monsters. Understand that I'm putting experience points in very simple terms here. Some games, such as World of Warcraft, allow a character to earn skill points whenever they craft, and after reaching certain crafting levels are able to make new items. Crafting systems like this are essentially level and experience systems applied to a different purpose. Rather than allowing a character to become a better fighter by fighting, they allow a character to become a better crafter by crafting. Therefore, the purpose of a leveling system is to allow statistical character growth gained from repetitive actions. This is to simulate a character becoming better at something by repeatedly doing it. The old adage, practice makes perfect. The concept has been simplified to be abstract, but is still a simulation of a real-life process. Non-computer RPGs do not have a mechanic designed to allow characters to become better at tasks by repeatedly doing them. For example, no matter how many times Link swings his sword or how many enemies he kills, he will not become a better sword fighter. Only by collecting better swords can he deal more damage with his sword. As to why these games that don't have role-playing are called computer RPGs, this is again because of history. Dungeons & Dragons introduced the concept of experience points and leveling systems. The earliest computer RPGs were attempts to make one-player games of D&D. The name stuck with the genre, even when later computer RPGs had nothing to do with D&D. Much like the modern-day usage of the word Vandal has nothing to do with the 5th century German tribe who sacked Rome, computer RPG has nothing to do with the game mechanic of role-playing. It's only describing the other unique mechanics introduced by role-playing games. The very essence of a computer RPG is repeatedly doing a task over and over again in order for a character to become better at that task. This mechanic stems from D&D, although it's not a mechanic that is a major part of D&D. Rather, it is a behavior that stems from incorporating level systems into a computer game environment. In a Dungeons & Dragons session, experience is tallied and awarded to characters at the end of the game session, not during the session. In almost all computer RPGs, characters level up during play. This, and that computer RPG characters are heavily built around combat, changes the way the games are played. Unlike a tabletop RPG like Dungeons & Dragons, computer RPG design creates a design philosophy where a player's time investment is rewarded. The more time you spend fighting, the better at fighting you become. This is why people that play massively multiplayer online RPGs will not accept the permadeath mechanic, even though it is common in tabletop RPGs. In a tabletop RPG, players don't generally invest thousands of hours into playing one character, like they do in World of Warcraft or Ragnarok Online. To lose a character they invested so much time into would frustrate them too much. In summary, computer RPGs, while descended from tabletop RPGs, are not and should not be considered the same genre as tabletop RPGs. The differences go well beyond whether the game is played on a computer or with a pencil and paper. The differences are in the mechanics and the design philosophy of the games.